Peace and love, family. Welcome to another Read Book Club discussion. Tonight we are discussing chapter 7 of The Color of Money, Black Banks and the Racial Wealth Gap by Mehrsa Baradaran. Family. I just wanted to I gotta give Big Brother T Wolo. I gotta give him his flowers, as my mother would say, while he can smell them. Brother T, you recommended this book to me around the time that we were discussing Blueprint for Black Power. That was in 2018. I think we started discussing Blueprint for Black Power April, maybe either April or August of 2018. I know it was around the spring, summertime.
Right.
And you said, sis, you got to read this book, The Color of Money. You got to get The Color of Money. You got to read The Color of Law. And then you said, you got to start listening to Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore. So you're telling me all of these things that, you're telling me to do these things. And I'm like, all right, T, ho, because that back then I was stuck on, not really stuck, but I'm still studying it, but I was studying in depth our contributions to STEM. And so I was studying traditional African culture. I'm studying STEM history as it relates to African people. And so I was moving, I was really entrenched, like really immersed in that sort of research. But then when we started reading Blueprint for Black Power and in reading Dr. Amos Wilson's work, and you were telling me about this, I said, okay, bro, I'm gonna get there. You said, but now I see why you were able to give us the perspective that you gave us during those discussions, because you were already reading this type of stuff, and I'm telling you, T, this was a wonderful book. I was bragging to my aunt about it. I said, Auntie, I said, Brother T, I said, he outdid himself with this book, The Color of Money. Anyone trying to understand why Black people are in America are at the bottom of the racial hierarchy, if you want to understand that, this is a book that will detail the president's laws, policies, and practices that have shaped our reality here in America. And so, Brother T, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking my understanding to another level, because I read Powernomics, but now reading this, it makes me understand Dr. Claude Anderson more.
Yep.
I can understand what Dr. Claude Anderson is saying after reading this. Now I understand Powernomics, and now, I'm thinking not even just you got Claude Anderson, he's Powernomics, Black Labor, White Wealth. Now I can understand what he was trying to get across, because you really heightened my understanding, and I appreciate that. Like, even I was just telling you backstage when I was on Fox Soul, a lot of my talking points, I got that from this, reading this, and so I was just like, man. We say, big bro,
you was lighting them up
with these talking points. And so I said, man, I gotta thank Big Brother T from the bottom of my heart, for just putting this book in my hand. And even we're reading The Color of Law after this. And so then so you really helped me understand why we are in this predicament. And it's not just slavery and Jim Crow, because that's what we go to. Slavery and Jim Crow.
Right.
And some of us may talk about convict leasing and sharecropping and, vagrant, the black codes and all of that. But it's even deeper than that.
Yeah.
It's even deeper than that. And so this book gave me that understanding. And T, I just want to publicly thank you for that.
I was just thank you so much, and thank you so much for allowing me to share. That's the most important thing. Allowing me to share and being able to listen and help take note, and also give me feedback, because you helped me out tremendously in my studies and my understanding, plus to dispel the myths. And that right now, because of the scholarship, you helped me out to even break this stuff down. So thank you as well.
I shade, Brother T. So, Brother T, go ahead and introduce yourself to the listening audience. I know we just had a moment, but go ahead and introduce yourself to the listening audience.
Hey family, how you doing? I'm Brother T, Brother T Wolo, affectionately. I'm known as JT Coin Ring, also in the YouTube community, where I take coin rings, coins, and make them into rings from gold and silver coins. But tonight we're talking about this awesome book by Mehrsa Baradaran on the color of money, black banks, and the racial wealth gap. So join us page by page. We're right now in chapter 7.
Yes, yes, yes. And I see some people are coming in and going out. Family, look, if you don't have the book, and you haven't read or you have the book and didn't read, still stay. I see some people coming in, dropping off, coming in, dropping off. Still stick around, okay, and learn some things. Shout out to Shimsu Net. My brother. Shimsu Netch is in the building. And he's a R.E.A.D Book Club. It was the Ram at first, but he's an alumnus. And so, Shimsu, we can't wait to have you back on here, brother. And no, I haven't read 1619 yet. Have you read it, Brother T?
I haven't either.
Okay, so we haven't read that, brother Shimsu. But thank you so much for joining us. Peace and love to a beautiful mind. She's in the building, that beloved sister warrior. We have Crystal Denise, brilliant sister. She's in the building. Peace and love to you. Nadia Thomas, peace and love to you, beloved. Sister Virgo Venom. She said, Hotep Dr. Ma'at and Brother T, glad to be here. Can't wait for my book to come. Ashe, sister. Ashe. Brother Daniel is in the book. He said, I have the same book as well. Peace to you, Brother Daniel. Peace to you, brother. All right. So, Brother T, I mean, you do it best when you start us off by reading the first paragraph. So go ahead, Brother T, and start us off.
Chapter 7 of the Free Market Confronts Black Poverty. This is another great chapter. I love the fact that she continues from the last by giving some solid information. Because you want to understand the presidential candidates and also the presidents once they make office. What are their agenda? And what did they drag from previous presidents? And now we're looking at the Democratic president, Jimmy Carter. I don't think Jimmy Carter is one of those presidents that you know if you grew up in the early 70s, in the 80s, you may have heard of him, but he's one of those presidents that kind of people kind of turn the page on a little bit, right? Because his agenda was basically the same. He was a Democratic president, and that's all we know before we get to that new era of presidents that we know from the Reagans and the Bushes and stuff like that, because their agenda was basically rhetoric that was found in that Nixon administration, right? So basically on this second paragraph, it says, on the campaign trail, and the president, Jimmy Carter, portrayed the country as post-racial. So we wanted to focus on post-racial because we thought now we came from all of those, the era that we got Lyndon B. Johnson, the civil rights era of the laws and things. And when we come up, we got the crazy Nixon. We got Nixon and everything that he had from the Southern strategy. Now you have this Jimmy Carter, and Jimmy Carter saying, now we no longer need to worry about race because we got all the civil rights. Let's focus now on building the nation. So, and plus he was a Democrat. So he chastised the Democrat primarily point, Jesse Jackson, for overemphasizing racial problems. He was the president to say, hey, let's not talk about it no more. We already dealt with that. Now, we thought we would get some sympathy from Jimmy because Jimmy was a Democrat. Right. So he downs Jesse Jackson that says, hey, stop talking about race because we already been there. Every time a president wants to kind of put a nail in the coffin, they go to our beloved ancestor, Dr. Martin Luther King.
Yep.
He says, I see an American in which Martin Luther King's dream is a national dream. This is President Ronald Reagan also harshly denounced racism and embraced King's dream. When Reagan made King's birthday a national holiday in 1983. So this is the era that they start to use like Dr. King's birthday as a washover. They say, hey, we're not going to deal with issues. We're just going to give you some more symmetry along the racial racism that we're gonna throw at you.
Teach
So when it comes down to Jimmy, after the Nixon administration, we learned so much about in previous chapters, we see that the presidents are still the same. They're now building this whole entire makeup of, now we're just going to give you some symbolism to try to wash away anything important to build your community. As we'll see in these chapters, that they created programs, but they didn't create solutions. So, and this first page breaks down that.
Absolutely. I mean, T, that was a wonderful introductions. Peace to the people who are just joining us. Peace, family. Peace, peace, peace. Thank you for joining us. Reading and discussing chapter 5 of The Color of Money. The free market confronts Black poverty. If you don't have the book, see, as soon as I said that, somebody dropped off. If you don't have the book, family, still stay and learn something, okay? Because you'll learn something just by listening. I remember my mother said, she doesn't have the book, doesn't read it, but she joins in and she says, I join in because every time I listen to you all, I learn something. All right. And so even if you don't have the book, family, please join us. We're discussing chapter 7, the free market confronts Black poverty. And so that was a wonderful, wonderful introduction, Brother T, by the way. I would just like to add by defining what we mean by free market. Awesome. And so when I did a quick Google search, and I can just share my screen, I love to, I guess that's the teacher in me, brother T, just always got to define something, right? Like, got to start off with definition. So by free market, we mean, look at this, family, an economic system in which prices are determined by unrestricted competition between privately owned businesses. Okay, that's one definition. If we go to, Investopedia, it says a free market is one where voluntary exchange and the laws of supply and demand provide the sole basis for the economic system without government intervention. This is what I actually like this definition better. The Britannica says it's an unregulated system of economic exchange in which taxes, quality controls, quotas, tariffs, and other forms of centralized economic, let me click on it, other forms of centralized economic intervention by the government either do not exist or minimum. Okay. And so it's kind of like, hey, everybody's, businesses are free to do whatever they want to do, right? Like set their prices and regulate themselves without government intervention. Go ahead, Brother T.
I wanted to focus on that part, the last part you said, without government what?
Intervention.
Right. So you look at this, in this chapter, we focused on just how the government gets a slippery hand, how they remove themselves from giving any funding to problems that they created. So what they created in this chapter was businesses. If you can help with this civil issue of giving donations, when you give donations to certain causes, we'll give you what you need and what you want, which is called tax breaks.
Come on, tax write-off. Come on, tax breaks.
Right. So supposedly first Black president that a lot of people taunted in the early 90s with Clinton, he created some of these initiatives that say businesses, if you donate to these causes that we don't want to publicly fund, coming from benign neglect from Nixon era, we'll give you these tax initiatives. So a lot of businesses were put in a community, move from Black capitalism to community capitalism that was created during that administration. So just like they look at real estate agents and other big businesses as helping the government to provide houses on one end and provide jobs on the other, they say if you now do social giving, we'll give you a benefit as well. So I say that because people are up in arms about Ralph Lauren's supposedly soon to be 100,000 plus giving to a HBCU. I believe it's Morehouse in Atlanta.
And this is recently, Brother T?
This is supposed to be recently. I heard it on a platform. I'm gonna look up to it. Maybe we can talk about our next show.
Okay.
And people look at say, hey, that's only a little bit, because how much have the Black community given to Ralph Lauren? it should be in the millions, right?
Right.
So people look at this social giving as, hey, he's just given a certain gift. But what he's doing, he probably created some minority giving program in his business, which also helps give him a tax reduction. So this is what we'll be talking about in this chapter as well, how the community capitalism replaced Black capitalism.
And I can't wait until you look into that, Brother T, because I will be I actually agree with those folks, but I'm not surprised that he just kind of gave him 100,000 just to say, hey, I donated to this HBCU or whatever. But he's right. Right. You said Ralph Lauren. I mean, polo was a thing,
Yes.
Black community.
Right.
I remember even being in high school, if your horse, if it wasn't authentic polo, people would start joking you, like, oh, look at the horse got 3 legs on it. Look at, so because we had, in Baltimore, we had a flea market, Brother T.
Or the big one that
or the big polo horse.
Right.
But look, we go to the flea market and get bootleg polo, but that's how big polo was in Baltimore. And I'm pretty sure in other urban areas. And then remember the rappers. I know Lil Wayne used to wear like the polo underwear and he used to rock polo all the time. So it was just really, really big. And so he made millions and millions and millions of dollars off of Black people. And so, like you said, for him to turn around and say, well, I know that you made me millions, but here goes 100,000 is really a spit in the face. But at this point, Brother T, I'm like, I'm not even gonna say Black people like it, but that was a thought. It's like we getting used to getting spit in our face, right? And it's like, when will we stop, right? When will we stop and say no? Enough is enough.
And the reason why I bring this example up before we go just a step further is that we had some funding removed from HBCUs due to some new administration, correct?
Absolutely.
So usually businesses take the deficit that the government has. So because funding has been removed through the Biden administration, here comes business now saying, hey, let me go ahead and do our bidding so we can get some of those advantages as well. And also it looks good for the public perception.
Exactly. And I want to drive this home too. This is a point that Baradaran mentioned on the first page of chapter 7. If you go to the bottom. So these presidents, like you said, Jimmy Carter, President Ronald Reagan, because they said, hey, we're not going to deal with race anymore. Then she says that Black poverty became seen as something cultural. So Black people are poor. And this is what white people really believe, Brother T.
Yeah.
These Black people are poor because of their values, their priorities, their spending habits, their families. This is why they're impoverished. They think that so it became Black poverty became associated with a culture. So it's because of your culture, your way of life that impoverished you, not laws, policies, and practices. It's your culture. That's the reason why you are impoverished. All right. And
Good
so
point.
I just wanted to kind of drive that home. And so she talks about how President Reagan, and I remember President Reagan when I was in kindergarten. I remember attending a school called Monroe Saunders Creative Learning. It was a private school that my mother had me in for just kindergarten. And then she got me out of there. I was going to public school, but I was there for kindergarten. And I just remember seeing his picture on the wall, and when, he's right there with the flag. And so anyway, I didn't know, 4 or 5, I could care less about who the president was, but I do remember seeing his picture on the wall at the school. But President Reagan look how he weaponized the media. He demonized welfare. He didn't support welfare programs. They used the media to depict welfare queens. This is at the top of page 217. And so they showed a Black woman, right, in the media as a welfare queen. So it's kind of like making Black people feel bad about using social programs, right? And
goes,
so
it goes back to that dignity thing from Nixon. They changing people who get social programs. They don't want that because it doesn't make them dignified. Give Blacks dignity. So they using that same rhetoric and bringing it forward. They make sure they beating it to bring it home. So
no, absolutely. Like you said, using the same rhetoric. So as it says at the top, President Reagan attacked welfare spending, characterizing it as tax dollars being spent on welfare queens, feasting on a T-bone steak while hardworking Americans were standing in the check line with their package of hamburgers. But check this out. Whites received the large majority of welfare benefits. And it says, and welfare fraud was rare. So he's depicting on television, and this is what white folk, that's why I tell people you can't believe everything you see on TV, and that everything you see on TV is political. So here he is showing a black woman or black women depicting us as welfare queens, but the entire time white people were benefiting from welfare more than we were, right? Well, more than we were. So then she moves into the discussion of the war on drugs. So it says in 1982, Reagan initiated the war on drugs, even though drugs had not registered as a perceived problem. So it wasn't even a problem in the community. But what did they do? Use the good old propaganda machine.
That's right.
To make, and they created this crack epidemic. Oh, and they ran what I call a campaign of fear, a campaign of fear. That's what they did. They initiated or launched a campaign of fear. And so people are like, oh my gosh, crack is everywhere. Crack is in the community, and we locking up black. So they demonize black men. They demonize black men. They depicted black women as, welfare queens. And so he talking about this war on drugs, but it says, and it says that even the staunchest advocates of the war on drugs now admit that it was unfairly skewed to impose the harshest prison systems on black drug criminals rather than white ones. And it resulted in a generational devastation of the lives of young black men. It says in just a few years, federal funding for anti-drug law enforcement skyrocketed, while funding for treatment or prevention programs plummeted. It says anyone selling or possessing crack cocaine could face a lifetime in prison. How the hell do you get a life sentence for selling cocaine, for selling any drug?
Right.
A life sentence, like literally a life sentence. Okay. And it says that a media offensive sensationalized a crack epidemic in a city, one that didn't really exist yet, but it would, because they began to flood the black community with coke, drugs.
Now we have to look at. That's why I love how she put this book, because it plays like a movie. I think we said that before.
Yeah.
When you read this, the way that she puts the events in the chapters. When we looked at chapter 6, we learned about Patrick Moynihan and how he helped the Nixon administration create the image of the single mother, and the single mother, thus, as that article, as that show from CBS came out, focusing on single motherhood, and how they said, well, we don't need a father in the house. I don't see him as being essential. Now, that whole program created what was to come next. Now what we see in this Reagan administration, they're continuing now saying that single person is the root of the problem. No male in the household. Now, because of the crime and decay, as we saw now that they painted this picture about welfare, right? So now they said they're creating blacks in this culture. This is what they do. You know what I'm saying? This is how, because social programs created this monster. This is what they painting, right? So now we have to look at what was needed to fund a war. And this is what we start learning about how crack was pushed in our communities, and we got the post the Iran Contra war. When Oliver North and things came about, and we learned that they funded California drug trades, where Ricky Ross comes into play. This is the era that they created this page. They needed money to fund the war. So what did they do? Created this war on crime. This is the main function. This is the main tool. So all they did was set the stage. And then if you're old as I am, you remember his wife, Nancy Reagan, saying, "This is your mind on drugs." It was an egg.
I remember the commercial.
Right.
Remember the guy would crack the egg. He cracked the egg, and your brain. Absolutely. Or no, Nancy Reagan was just say no. That's what
yes.
Hello, you go in the commercial. I remember that. Just say no. And
Right.
then it was the commercial with the white dude. Hold on, I'm gonna find it. It's on YouTube. Hold on, I gotta find it. This is your brain on drugs. He cracked the egg.
So this whole campaign, down to the commercials, down to setting the stage, was for a bigger purpose for the government. They needed funding to fund this war. And they anyone remember Oliver North? This is the time. So in this part of the chapter, Baradaran is setting the stage for us to understand exactly how vile this government was.
Is there anyone out there who still isn't clear about what doing drugs does? Okay, last time. This is your brain. This is drugs. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions?
See, that commercial took me back to the 80s, T.
Propaganda at its best.
And then I remember when I was younger. Remember McGruff, the crime dog?
Yes.
Nancy Reagan. Here's Reagan.
McGruff came to every school.
Yes. Yep. That was my
encourage you to be a snitch.
Here's her just say no. It says.
Yep, there she go.
These white folks.
See this cute little vial here?
Not Clint Eastwood.
Cocaine, the most addictive form. You think it's the glamour drug of the 80s? Well, that's the point of this friendly little reminder. It can kill you. And if you've got to die for something, this sure as hell ain't it.
In the next few months, the motion picture industry and theater owners will be bringing you a series of messages like the one you just saw. I don't think anybody will miss the point. The thrill can kill. The drug dealers need to know that we want them out of our schools, neighborhoods, and our lives. And the only way to do that is to take the customers away from the product. Say no to drugs and say yes to life.
Of course, your local drug pusher may tell you a little something different about these drugs. And who you believe is up to you. But then again, if you go ahead and try them, at least it won't be out of ignorance. Just stupidity. What would I do if someone offered me these drugs? I'd tell them to take a hike.
Just say no. Isn't that what it was, T? Just say no. Just say no to drugs.
A whole theatrical plan. And then when it boiled down to it, they're like, yep. It was our response. We definitely flooded drugs into the community for a purpose, to fund a war, the war on drugs, being played, and got one of the most successful actors in white Hollywood, Clint Eastwood. Crack cocaine was in black community.
Say it, T. T, that was my next point. It was where, brother T?
It was in black communities.
Come on.
We were the ones who were pushing the drugs, the crack cocaine. This was, if you look at the life of Ricky Ross, they tell you exactly how these things were created and how it's pushed.
Absolutely.
They knew cocaine in its purged form because blacks could not afford it in its purged form, right? So they know we wasn't doing that. But I heard the laws were less strict when it came to cocaine and crack.
Come on.
This commercial was targeted to our communities. It was in that lingo when he says, "You drug pusher." Come on now. You know who he was targeting. This whole thing was targeted to our communities.
Absolutely. Just like when and remember, they used the media to associate crime with blackness. And so when you had Hillary Clinton get on TV, remember Hillary Clinton, she got on TV, those predators. What was she talking about? And see, and what this did, what a lot of this stuff did was, again, demonize the black community and invoke fear in the white community. And then it also, so now we're using tax dollars to launch a war against against crime. Remember, crime is synonymous with black people. Drugs is now synonymous with black people. So we're going to do this, and we're going to use your tax dollars to do it, because and no one had an issue with that, because now you're using the propaganda machine to invoke fear in white folks. And so they were okay with their tax dollars going towards programs, right, that funded the war on drugs. They were okay with voting for certain presidents, remember, who were tough on crime. She talks about that in the book, how Bill Clinton, no, I gotta find it. Here it is. It's at the bottom of page 217. It says that George H.W. Bush, and we're not talking about junior, right? We're talking about senior. It says he defeated Democrat Michael Dukakis. Okay, thank you. In 1988, by linking him to a convicted black felon, Willie Horton, who, while serving a life sentence in Massachusetts, was given a furlough from which he never returned and went on to commit a rape and robbery. This occurred while Dukakis, I don't know if I butchered again, was governor of state, and Bush's chief strategist, Lee Atwater, bragged that he would make Willie Horton a household name. It says by repeatedly airing television ads featuring Horton, the Bush campaign stoked fear of black crime and pegged Dukakis as being too soft on crime. So they weaponized the propaganda machine. Just like on Friday, I had a discussion in family. If you didn't watch it, please watch it. I brought on a panel of sisters this past Friday to talk about the trans agenda to redefine womanhood and manhood. And what I noticed, Brother T, is that, this is how they shape our ethical thinking, our values, our tastes, our desires, our definitions. They use the propaganda machine. And I was saying on Friday that people are more controlled than we think. Yes. We're more controlled than we know. And so I was watching this commercial, an Adidas commercial, and it said, we're making the impossible possible. And then they slid in transgender women, I'm going like this, T, competing in female sports. And I said, wow, I'm just watching it. I said, oh, look at this. They use the propaganda machine to normalize this stuff. You get what I'm saying? And then before you know it, people won't look at it as a big deal. It's like it's on TV. We're used to seeing it. Everybody's doing it, and that's what they do. They use this propaganda machine to manipulate our minds more than we know. I tell people all the time, even my students, I have conversations with them about how our minds are consciously assaulted. So I asked them, I said, if somebody came up to you and they wanted to hit you in your face, what would you do? And my student said, I will block them. I said, oh, okay. I said, but why don't you have that same response with your mind? Because literally somebody is assaulting your mind every day. And what is your response? You just sit there and you just keep getting hit and hit and hit. So anyway, Brother T.
That's a good point.
They kept so anyway, Brother T. So they weaponized the media. So now white folks, so any president who came along had to be tough on crime, i.e. tough on the black community, because now in the black community, blackness is associated with crime, in order to even get elected. And it said that Bill Clinton did the same thing when he ran in 1992, right? They said he went to Arkansas to witness. He went to witness and encourage the execution of a mentally incapacitated black criminal, Ricky Ray Richter, and he won the election on a tough on crime, anti-welfare program. So, Brother T, that supports what you were saying at the beginning of the discussion when you said that all of these presidents did was analyze what the president before him did and say, okay, I saw what worked for him, so I'll go ahead and I'll use that. And like you said, Reagan was anti-welfare. He was anti-welfare. And then Clinton came and Clinton said, I'm anti-welfare, right? And Clinton, she talks about in the book how Clinton considered himself like a third, like kind of like in the middle between traditional Democrats and traditional Republicans.
He's
I
a new,
forgot exactly what she called him, huh?
New Democrat, he called himself.
Yeah, he was a new Democrat. He was a new Democrat. And so I love how you talked about at the beginning, T, how Black folks in Bill Clinton. And I remember being a teenager when Bill Clinton was in office, and people used to joke and say that's a Black president because he smoked his little cigars, he played the saxophone, he had a little
Arsenio Hall.
Went on Arsenio Hall, and then when he got caught with what was the scandal with the chick in the White House, and he left the semen on her dress.
Lewinsky.
Yeah, Monica Lewinsky. When that happened, you had the brothers like, yeah, that was, he Black, man. And Bill Clinton did nothing for Black people.
Right.
In fact, he didn't do anything for us, and then he pushed us further back. Using just by creating the policies that he did. And she spends time talking about that on 218 and 219, Brother T. Do you want to kind of summarize that one strike and you out and all of that stuff that he passed?
Yeah, he was definitely famous for doing the one strike and you're out, the public housing policy that resulted in many evictions. So like you made a point that Clinton didn't do anything to help us. In fact, he did a lot to hurt us based off his policy. He was, like we said, was called the New Democrat. He wanted to make sure that he wanted to show the American public that he was tough on crime, unlike his other Democrats that were a little softer. And that's how he won the Southern strategy in order to get into office. But like once again, every time they want to nail a point home, they always go to our beloved ancestor, Dr. King. He wanted to say by the year 2000, almost 800,000 Black men were in prison, compared to 600,000 who were in college. Thus, were more men in prison he had under slavery in 1850. After serving time, ex-felons could not find jobs, and many lost their right to vote. King's legacy assumed an even more cynical meaning under President Clinton, who used King's words to admonish the Black community. In 1993, Clinton told congregation at the Masonic Temple in Memphis, Tennessee, where King had delivered his mountaintop speech. If Martin Luther King were the Ren Reaper by my side today and give us a report card on our last 25 years, what would he say? You did a good job, he would say, letting people who have the ability to do so live wherever they want to live and go wherever they want to in this great country. But he would say, I did not live and die to see American family destroyed. I did not fight for the right for Black people to murder other Black people with reckless abandon. This is right here is a summary of how he used rhetoric. Now, as we said before, every president made sure they did their job to destroy the Black family, to put us in communities that had no way to have an upward mobility based off economic inclusion, to tear down every government program that would have included us in the fabric of the economic system. But then this man had the nerve to sit down at the last spot that King did one of his speeches to say that he would be ashamed of us because we're killing each other and what we have become of breaking down the family. When we learned that every administration had a hand in demonizing the Black family, and even to the point before his presidency, made sure that they put the nail in the coffin about introducing crack cocaine in our community. And this man has the nerve to win 2 terms and be revered as our first Black president.
And look at his little country bunking self right here. I just found it, Brother T. I just found his little, and like you said, people running around calling him he the first Black president. See, that's why political education is a must. It's a must. That stuff needs to be, that's why African-centered education is so important. Salute to Crystal Denise. Salute to Marcus Klein, Baba Mwali Mu Baruti and his wife, Mama Ya Baruti. You know, salute to Baba Amin and his wife. African-centered education is important, and see it will help you see through this stuff. Political education, so we wouldn't be running around saying foolish stuff like President Clinton was the first. This is him at the Masonic Temple right here. This is him. I'm not going to play the whole thing. I just want to see his little country. Look at us. Look at everybody sitting there, Brother T. Happy.
Raise your hand.
Look at them. Happy, T.
Supporting.
They are happy.
And the church, you know, so when
now
you see
this man then locked up 800,000 black men, and we welcoming him to come speak at our institutions.
Right.
You may be seated.
Look at this.
His congressional district.
Black people
I would
love
like to,
Clinton.
if I might introduce just 3 other people who are members of the Congress. They have come here with me, and without them, it's hard for me to do much. It says, "A happy heart doeth good life." To reward work and family and community. The national service law that will give in 3 years 9 people who will buy what we have to produce. What I want to say to you, my fellow Americans, is nothing in this agreement make that more likely. I tell you, unless we do something about crime and violence and drugs that is ravaging the community, we will not be able to repair this country.
And we clapping for him. You hear that, T? I was just clicking through trying to find when he was going to start talking about drugs and crime. Hold on. But he's talking about you, black people. He's talking about you when he's talking about drugs and crime. He's talking about you because crime and drugs became associated or linked with blackness.
If Martin Luther King, who said, like Moses,
Here it is, T. We found it. T, we found it. I was just clicking around, T, and we found it. He brings up Dr. King. Let's go.
Right. I am on the mountaintop and I can see the promised land, but I'm not going to be able to get there with you. But we will get there. If he were to reappear by my side today and give us a report card on the last 25 years, what would he say? Say, you did a good job, he would say, voting and electing people who formerly were not electable because of the color of their skin. You have more political power, and that is good.
Who had political power, T? Did he really tell a crowd of black people that we have political power because we're voting? He called that political power? Oh my gosh.
You did a good job, he would say.
Yeah.
Letting people who have the ability to do so live wherever they want to live, go wherever they want to go in this great country. You did a good job, he would say, elevating people of color into the ranks of the United States Armed Forces to the very.
He would not towards the end of T. I'm surprised that nobody in that audience went like this. I couldn't be in the audience.
Or at least gave him a, could have gave him a boo or something, Puppets.
He just said that Dr. King would be happy because you got black folks who are in ranks, so basically positions, symbols, in the military, and black folks are. What else he say? Oh, we can live wherever we want to live and go wherever we want to go. That wasn't what Dr. King was focused on towards the end of his life before he was assassinated. He was like, man, he was just like, man, look, we need some political power. We need some economic power. We need some reparations. That's what he was on.
Right.
We need some reparations, man. We need some redress, man. Like that's what he talking about.
Very top. Or into the very top of our government. You did a very good job, he would say. He would say, you did a good job creating a black middle class. People who really are doing well, and the middle class is growing more among African Americans than among non-African Americans. You did a good job. You did a good job in opening opportunity. But he would say, I did not live and die to see the American family destroyed.
Destroyed by who, Brother T?
Right.
And what? And what? Could it be your one strike and you're out public housing policies that resulted in convictions, and by 2000 could that have contributed to the destruction of the Black family? Oh, no. It's the crack that you all flooded in the community. Oh, no. So he's making it seem like he's talking to us like it's our fault.
Right.
You know what I mean? Hold on.
I did not live and die to see 13-year-old boys get automatic weapons and gun down 9-year-olds just for the kick of it. I did not live and die to see young people destroy their own lives with drugs and then build fortunes destroying the lives of others. That is not what I came here to do. I fought for freedom, he would say, not for the freedom of people to kill each other with reckless abandon, not for the freedom of children to have children and the fathers of the children walk away from them and abandon them as if they don't amount to anything.
Wow, T.
I fought for people to have the right to work, but not to have whole communities and people abandoned. This is not what I lived and died for. My fellow Americans, you would say, I fought to stop white people from being so filled with hate that they would wreak violence on Black people. I did not fight for the right of Black people to murder other Black people.
Woo! T. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I dropped the bomb on that one.
Oh.
This man was laying so much on his crowd. But if you hear what he's saying, he's keeping those talking points where they want it. They want to make sure that they create the talking points to put the blame on the victim, even though they gave him no way out. Everything he stated, he said, it's like we chose this for ourselves.
Right.
We chose for the Black man to leave the house. We chose for single motherhood. We chose for crack cocaine to ravage our communities. We you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that these things in our community are like, we have no point of fixing it. But you gotta understand that this government puts so much on us that how can we fix it?
Exactly.
They gave us no viable program to do so.
Exactly.
But they did point to us, and then we went a step away.
No, absolutely, Brother T. I just wanted to go back to 217 real quick, where she says crime, drugs, and gang violence eventually envelope the ghetto. And we got to remember the ghetto was an unnatural creation of the government. That's what it is. Okay. Yeah. So she says crime, drugs, and gang violence eventually envelope the ghetto. Segregation, poverty, and distrust of police led to increased crime, which led to further marginalization, poverty, and even more policing. According to Jill Lovey's study of Black crime, ghetto-side, high rates of murder among Black men are a byproduct of poverty. Dr. Amos Wilson said that in Blueprint for Black Power. Dr. Amos Wilson said that our social problems are directly tied to our economic problems. So I just wanted to say that there, Brother T, before we moved on. At the bottom of page 219, she mentions the Fair Housing Act, and she said the Fair Housing Act mandate, and that was to, it says to affirmatively further fair housing came to be interpreted as only as a mandate to oppose outright discrimination in housing, but active integration simply stopped being discussed. And so remember, they didn't want to discriminate against us in the housing market. So, okay, we'll give them the Fair Housing Act. But during that time, there were efforts to actually integrate neighborhoods, white neighborhoods. And so around this time, they said it stopped. No one was pushing that. Okay. And in fact, she says, in a testament to how permanent segregation had become, major U.S. cities responded to overcrowding and housing shortages in the ghetto by constructing large-scale public housing projects, which maintain and bolster segregation patterns. I remember being in Baltimore along Martin Luther King Boulevard. High risers. Yeah, Murphy Homes. You had the high risers back then. And they actually took I'm on ET,
Yep.
they destroyed the high risers.
Yes, I remember they destroyed Murphy Homes. They brought it down by the bombing.
Baltimore. Yep, they bombed them. Baltimore City. And I'm pretty sure this was happening. This was happening in a lot of them. All right. And so I just did a quick Google search, but I know you all remember that. Anybody that's on this platform who lived in the city, you remember these high rise. Look at these. Remember the high risers.
Yep.
This is how the high risers looked, in Baltimore City. Yep. That's how they looked. And the only reason, and the only reason why they tore them down is because white folks started complaining. White folks started complaining because remember the stadium, the Orioles stadium is downtown, the baseball stadium, the football stadium. So they were building, different institutions downtown, and white folks would come off the Beltway and go to the stadium and go watch the football game and the baseball game. And they got tired of looking at those high risers.
That's right.
And so they ended up destroying the high risers.
Right.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna keep going though. I'm gonna keep on going. Okay. All right. And so it says segregation, white flight, and declining home values continue to hamper Black families' ability to grow wealth. So, I remember, and this is not a plug for him, but I remember Umar Johnson on the Breakfast Club. He kept saying, they locked us out of wealth. They locked us out of wealth. And I remember watching the clip and I was like, okay, they locked us out of wealth. All right, you had slavery and Jim Crow, but what the hell? Because he didn't break it down, and say they locked us out of wealth, and this is how they did it strategically. They passed laws, they passed policies. He just kept on saying they stopped us from creating wealth. But now I understand. Hindsight is 2020. Now I understand exactly what the brother was saying. And so I'm at the top of page 220, where she now talks about. She said when it came to the racial wealth gap, every administration after Nixon focused on some variation of Black capitalism, right? Mm-hmm. So she said, you had the Commerce Department report in 1975. It found out that most of their programs amounted to little more than technical assistance to minority firms. So they weren't pouring any money, like you said, Brother T, at the beginning of the discussion. They weren't pouring money into Black businesses. Mm-hmm. They weren't doing that. They were building, they were creating little programs, and giving them fancy names like look at this. 1976, Ford created a new agency called the Minority Business Resource Center, within the Department of Transportation. You had people like let me see, because Clinton did some stuff too. I'm trying to look for it. Little programs like this. Look at this. 1989, Congress passed the Financial Institutions Reform, Recovery, and Enactment in response to savings and loans crisis. But I know we're going to come across it, family. But it was a bunch of programs that they passed, and they gave these programs fancy names, and they did nothing for Black banks, Black businesses. They did nothing. And I know a lot of people are pumped up right now, Brother T, about Biden electing these women, Black women. He putting Black women in positions and Black women in. We've been down this road before. Look at the bottom of page 220. It says President Carter appointed more African Americans to federal offices than any president before him, but he had no coherent or visible message on Black poverty or civil rights. Doesn't that sound like Biden?
Yeah.
Isn't that what Biden is doing? He's putting these Black women in positions saying, she the Supreme Court. I nominated her, and then she did. But Biden will tell you, I don't believe in reparations. I don't support that, know. So he'll give you a Black person and put them in a position, but he won't give you anything. But this is not anything new. This is what they've always done. Top of page 221, T. Let's talk to them about the SBA contract set-asides. and how there was a court case that happened. Go ahead and bring that home, Brother T.
Yep, it's like President Carter, and you made the great point that how he created more jobs for the minority, but he still pulled off that I'm not doing anything for civil rights, even as a Democrat. So we come to the SBA, which on the top of 221, the contract is set aside that became a point of public controversy in 1978. This is the 1978 Mike Wallace 60-minute aired an expose revealing several grant recipients as fronts for white construction firms. So the Small Business Administration, was definitely funding people contracts that, that were fake. It's crazy. So on his 1978 Mike Wallace 60 Minutes added expose revealing several grant recipients as fronts for white construction firms. The Carter administration studied the program in 1979 and found that it suffered from lack of focused leadership, lack of consensus of major goals and objectives, inadequate utilization, limited resources, and unrealistic business expectations. It says the minority business getting grants were floundering, and the program having no clear mandate was riddled with inefficiencies. So they created these programs like the OMBE, the MBDA, and these programs are kind of empty. They was there to regulate businesses and to kind of find out if they're working or not. And they would give record to say, hey, this company is we found this or we found that, but they didn't do anything. So another government agency that was created to find the problem, but guess what? We're not going to do anything about the problem. We're here to let you know that we've done an audit. So if we find this in business, and we'll find out in other administrations that they did it with banking. And so we always ask, like, okay, what is a bank doing in our community? What is a business doing in our community? Oh, let's build a fund for it. Let's build an organization for it. And once we build this organization, we'll say, hey, we got record of it, but guess what? We have record that they did it, but we can't do anything about it. We did our job though. So it's another way to funnel money through the system and create a perspective that never really helped us, from the SBA all the way down to also the OMBE, which created in the Nixon administration. They're just organizations that audit the program, but they don't do anything effective to change the situation that's needed.
No, absolutely. And I wanted to talk about that court case that she mentioned. It was a court case because this is when they started. Am I jumping ahead? So at the top, yep, SBA, and all right, it says denouncing discrimination, avoiding systematic race-based reform, not pushing. So Nixon, we talked about that, free market, tax cuts, talked about that. It says, while cutting, okay, I'm at the top of page 222. While cutting anti-poverty programs, Reagan enthusiastically supported Black businesses. They said they were going to use a free economy to help defeat discrimination by fostering opportunity for all. And so then he started calling the ghetto enterprise zones.
Enterprise zones.
Now they say opportunity zones, right?
I'm gonna say, you know what
I mean, T? So when I was reading this, it says he began calling inner city ghettos enterprise zones. I said enterprise zones. I said that sounds like what they're doing. Oh my goodness,
opportunity.
T is nothing new under the sun.
That's right.
That's why we have to study history. As Professor James Small would say, history erases the mystery. You look blurry now, T. History erases you look really blurry, T.
Yeah, I think I actually kicked in my cat.
You did something, brother T, with your camera, and now you look you still look blurry, brother T.
I'll get it.
All right, you'll get it. All right, you say you'll work with it.
There we go.
There we go. Professor James Small says, history erases the mystery. Our ancestors and elders talked to us about using history as a tool. When you know better, you do better. And so this opportunity zone stuff that they're talking, before that, the predecessor, was, the enterprise zones. And it says he began, calling the inner city enterprise zones. It says apart from tax cuts, Reagan's did not offer any specific plan to create jobs or opportunities. The free market, it was believed, would take care of the rest. So we'll just give the ghetto some entrepreneurs.
And it's just a Crystal Denise made point, is that they began using words minority and diversity to continue to exclude us, recreated, redefined, and rewarded. So at that time frame in the ghetto, they changed these programs' names, as we've seen, as you recognize, from down to an empowerment zone into the opportunity zone. Mm-hmm. All these zones, all of this is being recreated, and they had to use words to now say, okay, now that we got these rights, and we know that affirmative action was created for African Americans, because guess what? Lyndon B. Johnson made point of this on the steps of Howard University in 1960s. Mm-hmm. But now that we created this affirmative action based off the discrimination of the impoverished people that we help make that way, now we're going to create this actual program, which was in the 70s. Now this program we're going to give to all. So any program that was created for the betterment, they now included people, as Sister Denise stated, that they now wanted to change it so they can include minorities, and minorities now included women. And as we know, most of the programs benefited white women when we look at the things opening up. So we had to always watch the name change. And minority and diversity was one of the changes that happened during this time frame.
Absolutely. And remember, it took place at the court after that court case. And it's at the bottom of page 223. It says in 1989, a white construction company. Now, this is when affirmative action was in place. In 1989, a white construction company sued Richmond's minority set-aside problem, arguing that the program violated the white company's constitutional right to equal protection under the law. Mm-hmm. In City of Richmond versus Croson, the Supreme Court agreed and ended the program. All right. So it says that even in doing so, Brother T, even in doing so, it says that, the Justice O'Connor used Dr. King's rhetoric, right? And said, the dream of a nation of equal citizens in a society where race is irrelevant to personal opportunity and achievement will be lost, right? And the mosaic of shifting preferences based on inherently unmeasurable claims of past wrongs. But they said that he used some of, Dr. King's stuff, and as a lot of them do.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's talking points definitely coming from King.
Absolutely. And she says right here, she said King's confused legacy was often wielded as a potent weapon in opposition to affirmative action programs. But she said in King's book, Where Do We Go From Here? King said, a society that has done something special against the Negro for hundreds of years must now do something special for him. So these white folks are running around. That's why we got to study. We got to study. Yes. They got to study, because if we really study Dr. King, and I'm talking about his speeches and read his book, read his letters from the Birmingham jail, if we really studied his work, Clinton would not have been able to sit in that audience amongst those black men and say what Dr. King would have wanted and would not have wanted. He would, they would not, no one would have applauded him. They probably would have kicked his ass out of there. That's probably what they would have done. Coming in there talking about, if Martin was beside me, this is what he would have said. You get what I'm saying? And so that's why it's imperative that we study. So moving on, they talk about in 1989, Congress passed the Financial Institutions Reform, Recovery, and Enforcement Act in response to the saving and loan crisis. It says the act primarily focused on regulating the failed thrift sector, but it also included a much less discussed provision on minority banks. So this act actually hurt our banks, Brother T. It says that Section 308 of FIRR, I always say FIRREA, entitled Preserving Minority Ownership of Minority Financial Institutions, contained the first legislative decree concerning minority banks. Section 308 did not authorize any financial help to Black banks. So this goes back to what we were saying earlier, T, that they come up with these fancy program names and acts, but they don't do anything for Black banks. So look at this. It said it did not authorize any financial help to Black banks, but instructed the FDIC Treasury and now the defunct Office of Thrift Supervision to pay attention to the sector, specifically to work toward preserving the present number and character of minority deposit institutions. And we'll find out later. Remember, Brother T, in the chapter, she talked about Jackie Robinson's bank, Freedom's Bank of Harlem, Freedom National Bank of Harlem, and how the FDIC could have saved the bank when it failed in 1990, and it chose not to.
Didn't that happen before to brother who had Binga? Brother
Binga.
His also went before the Great Depression. His bank could have been also saved, and then we learned later on the bank that could have been saved. And he put the money into all of the insurance funding, and he wasn't even saved. But they did First National Bank that was in DC. So time at the time, we tried to play the game on the financial sector, and we were pulled out. The rug was pulled underneath our feet.
No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so then she started talking about, executive orders establishing the OBM, which you mentioned, T, and we talked about that in the last chapter. It talked about the definitions of how they even had a loose definition of what a minority business was. And so, like you said, Brother T, it went from, Black to minority to include Puerto Ricans, Hispanics, women, midgets, and everybody else, Brother T. All right. Everybody else. So it said that, the Supreme Court, since it put it, I'm at the middle of 226. It said they had to, since the Supreme Court had put an end to any programs meant to remedy past discrimination. So the purpose of the program shifted to focus instead on diversity. So now, T, we talking about diversity, and that's what Sister Crystal said. They began using words minority, diversity to continue to exclude us, recreate, redefine, and reword it. Ashe. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, sis. And so then it says right here, Clinton's program also relied on private business to pour money into the ghetto, but he did not appeal to philanthropic aims at all. He promised profits. So he was telling them, look, man, the ghetto is an untapped source. You should go in there, make money. And while you're making some profits, throw some more money, like you said, Brother T, throw some money into the community. We'll give you tax cuts, and we'll give you that. And so they were really exploiting us, T, when you think about it. This was exploitation at its finest. This wasn't helping Black people. This was sending entrepreneurs in there to take advantage of Black people. And then at the bottom of page 228, she tells us that Messy Jesse Jackson joined Clinton. Because remember, it went from, Black enterprise to minority enterprise. Now it's community capitalism, like you said, community capitalism, community enterprise, and so Messy Jesse Jackson, I got that from salute to Dr. Khalid Muhammad. He called him Messy Jesse. So Messy Jesse, got on board with it. And at the top of page 229, it says that Clinton's community capitalism program applied to banks was embodied in the RIGI Community Development and Regulatory Improvement Act of 1994, commonly known as the Community Development Banking Act. The act provided tax incentives for bank or community development financial institutions, CDFIs, that served underprivileged areas. President Clinton said that the bill was inspired by a living bank that was putting the theory of community capitalism into practice. And so he was trying to model this thing after Chicago's Shore Bank. and it was the country's most famous black bank. Look at this, T. Even though it wasn't black owned,
they changed the dynamics of what was black owned,
so
or
it said
servicing black people.
We service black people. So it says Shore's bank primary aim was to fight urban decline. At its peak, it had invested $4.1 billion in the inner city Chicago. So the theory behind this whole community development bank, right? Community development financial institutions was, again, he felt like it's some hidden profits in the ghetto, and you all should go to the ghetto and get that money. And so at the bottom of page 231, it said that the CDFI, so the Community Development Financial Institutions Fund, got a boost in 2000 with the New Market Tax Credit, okay, which was created to direct new business capital to low-income communities, facilitate economic development in those communities, and encourage investment in high-risk areas. All right. It say it was passed along with the New Markets Venture Capital initiatives, and Clinton called them the most significant effort ever to help distressed communities by leveraging private investment. But it's the first black president, Brother T.
That's right.
This is the first black president. And, and so it says the design of the program carries certain distorting features. So again, it says that made it more likely that the funds will flow toward projects and proposals that were more profitable rather than those that were more effective at meeting the program's goals. So they create these things, they create these funds, T, and then they have these vague definitions. And then next, the money is not utilized for its intended purposes. And then the money always finds its way back into white hands. So it's saying, so even though they say, well, we're setting up this fund and we're passing this policy to help, distressed communities, i.e., black communities, minority communities, the money always found its way back into white hands. Brother T, did you want to get in on that? I know I've been going.
Oh no, you did good job, and I appreciate you breaking it down for each page. But right on 232 to keep it going, and what you was speaking about how now Clinton was so crafty, and this is why people always gave him that praise of being that type of politician. He knew how to mix a whole bunch in this gumbo soup. Being from Arkansas, this man knew that, hey, in order to be president, I have to keep pushing the programs from the past. So just like black capitalism, community capitalism was the next agenda. But on page 232, it states that the CDFI fund was rooted in black capitalism model. The Community Reinvestment Act, the CRA, was rooted in the original affirmative action model. Its justification was a remedy to discriminatory redlining, and its mission was to require mainstream banks to lend a fair portion of their loans into the ghetto. Although redlining had been based on explicit racial discrimination, the CRA had to be designed to be colorblind. I want to understand these programs that was geared towards us because they needed to address issues. As policies start to go forward, they changed his name. Now they changed his mission. We can no longer say for blacks, we're going to say minorities. So now it has to be colorblind. So this is an example of a program that was created that eventually puts money back into white hands by using those code words: diversified, minority. This is what you was talking about earlier, and what Sister Denise was talking about as well. So the CDFI fund was rooted in these former programs, but as we stated here, it had to be colorblind, much like affirmative action. And the act has been one of the most vilified of banking laws. even as it was criticized by civil rights groups as being toothless and the counteracting the legacy of past injustices such as redlining. So we have to be real careful from that we look at these programs and to examine it under a microscope, because these programs are nothing but programs from the past, but they totally change it, and they spoon feed us this new program, and we think, hey, this is the best next thing to slice bread because it's going to help us. What they're doing is totally weaning this out, and this is what we see in today's public agenda. We've totally been pushed out the way. As Biden says, I'm no longer giving anything to African Americans, along with Kamala. We're now going to look at the Latino community. Let's look at Venezuela. Now we're looking at Ukraine. There's always a way to create a program that X us out. And anything that's totally for us, they can't do. That's why you look at Kamala. She says, I'm not going to do nothing just for African Americans.
Yes, she did.
This is what we see. We see right now. It is colorblind politics. So this is what I love this book, because now it's explaining right here how they did it in the banking industry. And this is exactly why we haven't had any benefits geared to us to be helpful for us. We got to basically knock on the door of opportunity. But when we go in there, we see a whole plethora of people that don't look like us. And we got to fight for rights just with this group instead of something being geared towards us. So they go on and continue to talk about that up to page 234, which he mentions about the CRA once again. So it says the CRA still sits awkwardly between a group of people who believe it does not achieve nearly enough and another group that believe it requires too much. So you have whites that say, why are the blacks getting rights? That's discrimination. It's impinging on my rights. Instead of them looking and saying how they benefited from all these years, they want to kind of, I'm sorry, my phone. They want to go ahead and create, hey, we're being discriminated next. So them fighting against the law again. Now we hear about affirmative action, which is on 234. Affirmative action.
Hold on, Brother T. I want you to touch on the CRA rating that actually hurt black banks.
Okay, go ahead and cut.
Yeah, that was like in the middle, because I know we're going to get into affirmative action, but I just want to let me plug it really quickly.
Okay, go ahead.
It talked about, and I think that was the wrong year. It says the bill was sponsored by Senator William Proxmire in 1970. Well, it says 1977. So I guess they're talking about the CDFI, right? It says when he served as chair of the Senate Banking Committee, he helped pass the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act in 1975, which had forced to divulge loan information based on race. It armed the HMDA data that revealed that banks were deliberately avoiding making loans in the black community. So people say home ownership is down in the black community, but they don't tell you what they did, how homes got taken from us via contract sellers, right? Who would, we might miss a payment and we have a contract with them, and it's really, they had the mortgage on the house, and they would say, I'm not giving you the house. They won't tell you about how mortgage companies didn't loan to black people, and if they did loan to us, that we paid double for the house, we paid higher interest. So they say home ownership is down in the black community, but why? What happened? What caused that? Are you just saying that black people inherently don't want to own homes, right? And so anyway, it says Proxmire crafted a legislative remedy. He reasoned that because banks had created the problem, they had a duty to remedy it, right? And so that was the CRA, right? The Community Reinvestment Act. And so banks would then get a rating, something called a CRA rating. And so he says right here that specifically the bill required, I'm in the middle of 233, specifically the bill required banks to prepare annual reports describing whether they were meeting the credit needs of low to moderate income residents. Bank regulators were to rate each bank from outstanding to substantial non-compliance based on the quality of loans they were issuing in low income areas. The bill did not force banks to lend or open branches in any particular community, but a negative CRA rating could be used by a bank regulator to deny a bank's application for merger and any other change that required regulatory approval. Now, it says right here at the top of page 34, the law also hurt black banks as they have struggled to comply with the CRA. This seems counterintuitive. Black banks have been doing the very thing the law requires other banks to do. However, since the CRA has assessed compliance by measuring the quantity, right, of loans granted, black banks consistently fall short because they offer few loans than average. Many black banks thus had a non-compliant CRA ratings that then entail regulatory censure. So remember, with black banks, Brother T, we had to give out fewer loans because 40% of our money was tied up in government. What did it call? What was it called? Government,
like junk bonds or something like that.
Like the bonds and all of that. But it's a word for them. It's a word for it. And Sister Crystal, help me out in the chat. There's a word for it. Government. We say, Brother T.
It wasn't treasury bonds. It was
No, it was. I'm looking for it now. They had out 40% of our money was tied up in
the one we couldn't pay back because we couldn't afford to pay back. What was the name of the bonds?
Oh, the government securities. There we go.
Okay.
Government securities. Our money, 40% of our money was tied up in government securities because remember, black banks had a volatile deposits. So you had a lot of black people, they put their money in, take it out, put their money in, take it out. So black banks couldn't multiply, the money that they were getting in from deposits because they had what's called volatile deposits. And then they had not only from black folks who were depositing, but even the government agents, businesses that were putting their money in there. They said that their deposits were, wish-washy. I'm using the word wish-washy, family, but they weren't stable. So there we go. They were putting, their deposits were unstable. So, there were a lot of things going on with banks, and let me kind of I'll summarize it later. But so we could not give out loans, so we would end up getting a bad CRA rating, which impacted us. But go ahead, brother. Move on to affirmative action.
Oh, we moved on to. Okay, let me go to that back to 234.
Yes.
So affirmative action opponents claim that the pool of minority applicants perform worse than white applicants. And therefore, when underperforming minority students are admitted, there is a mismatch of capacity that harms both the school and the applicant. So now they're building a claim up for affirmative action. They're saying that, hey, you're allowing minorities to come in, but they're not meeting the standards of the university. That's not good for the minorities, and it's not good for the institution. So we should do away with affirmative action and let it be merit-based. This is like another way, and I always think about Neely Fuller when it comes down, when he talks about the 9 areas of human activity, right? He talks about how white racism, white supremacy in every sector of those 9 areas. They're now breaking down school, the institution. They're saying, hey, we're not going to make it fair, even though we know that we haven't funded HBCUs like that. As we see right now, we're defunding HBCUs. Don't think we need more money for HBCUs to have the programs that's needed to teach our kids. Let's defund it. Now, let's say when our kids get to a point to go into the white institutions, let's not use affirmative action because, hey, that does not help the minority. It doesn't help the institution. So let's do away with it so we can make sure that we can create something else that keeps them out. So this is one of the things that I find that they always find ways to give us a program and to take that program away because they don't see it really being helpful, as they did with welfare. But we'll give you a social program, then we'll condemn you for taking it. So every program they set out, they always find a way to snatch it from us, but they first demonize us for even accepting it and using it because they knew it was for a purpose. So once they realize it's something to give us a leg up, they make sure they make us triple. So when it comes down to affirmative action, it says that the mismatch theory, whites should continue to dominate elite universities until blacks catch up naturally. Banks also claim that they should avoid lending in distressed areas, not because they are discriminating, but because those areas are not profitable and those loans are riskier. So once again, they say, you know what? Students need to catch up, and we're not going to lend money into an area that's not going to make it profitable. Not saying we're not going to lend to blacks. We're just not going to lend to people who cannot afford to pay. Why? Because of racial hierarchy that was put into place early on. They don't want to tell you the cause of us not able to take care of paying loans or having the right jobs or having the right education. Let's just take the program so it'll make it even harder until they become stronger in order to do it. It's like it's ridiculous, but I love the fact that this book is breaking down that they show us the programs that they're trying to snatch from us. They show us the programs, and she also shows how the whites look at it as being a fight against them, and that's why I love this part of the book.
Absolutely. And I, and moving on to page 235, this really hit home for me. Remember the housing crisis, when there was a housing crisis. I want to say it was in 2008 when the recession came and people's houses went from, a value that, some people lost 100,000 just in the value of their homes back then, but it bubbled. So let's talk about the root cause of that, right? So in the middle of page 235, she says one of the most consequential financial innovations of the century was the mortgage-backed system, which fundamentally changed the secondary mortgage market. All right. So in 1938, I couldn't stand that they named it Fannie Mae. But in 1938, Fannie Mae was the first government-sponsored enterprise, was created to facilitate the sale of mortgages in the secondary market. So you would go, and I remember this happened to me, Brother T, when I purchased my first home. I initially got it through one company, and then like a couple of months later, another company reached out and they was like, yeah, you just had to send your mortgage payment to me, because that company sold my mortgage, right? Yeah. And so again, this happened in 1938, family, where they created this government enterprise that facilitated the sale of mortgages in the secondary market. Fast forward, you get to 1968. It says the Fair Housing Act privatized the Fannie Mae and spun off a new entity called the Government National Mortgage Association. So now this wasn't a government thing, right? Now, Brother T, like you said, now this is, they've privatized it. So companies now can get in on this, right? Mm-hmm. So then it says the third government-sponsored enterprise, Freddie Mac, was created in 1970 to expand the private secondary market for mortgage loans. Okay. Freddie Mac was never sponsored by the government, but it had the warm glow of government support because of its association with the other two giants. So before you know it, let's go to the top of page 36. So it says banks could now originate a mortgage and immediately sell it on a secondary market where it would be bought and traded by a variety of new MBS mortgage-backed security. So it says, mortgage-backed security investors. Thanks to Fannie Mae's creation of the MBS, capital from around the world began pouring into American mortgage markets, and capital became plentiful. So it's like, you get a loan, everybody get a loan, you get a loan. Even if people couldn't afford the houses, they were, you get a loan, everybody get a loan, because they were taking the loans and selling them. And so that became, look at this. It says it reassembled. It said it reassembled. So there was a boom, family. So it says it resembled, let me highlight this. It resembled the 18th century cotton market, where capital from abroad flooded U.S. markets and created financial innovations and new products. Well, what were their new products, T? T, exploitation comes. With these people we dealing with, they always look for a way to exploit us. So it says, it was not enough loans to feed the beast. So ingenious bankers created products that were based on other products. One of the products was tranches. It says tranches of mortgage debt. The other one was a subprime market. These loans, right? These were loans to borrowers who did not meet the underwriting standards set forth by the government security. Government security enterprise, or prime loans. And guess who got the subprime loans? Who was it, T?
Us.
It was us. They went right to the hood. You want a house? Don't worry. You'll get, and they do that today. Just come in, you'll get approved. We guarantee we get you approved.
That's right.
But they don't tell you before you walk your black tail in there that your interest rate is going to be 20% for your car. They don't tell you that. They just have commercials. Don't make me pull up the commercials, T, because we got some in Baltimore, right? They on TV, they're doing hip hop and come on in, get your loan, get your car. They show you a fleet of cars, T. Come on in, you'll get approved. It doesn't matter what your credit score is. We'll approve you, baby. We'll approve you.
Give me the boxes, sis.
And look, T. And so we go in there and then we sit down and we fill out the application and they approve us. And they say, you are approved, and your interest rate is 20%. And by the way, your payment and your interest rate, that put that on top of your payment. So now you're paying $800, right, per month for a daggone vehicle that if you had the credit or if you had the right skin color, you probably be paying about $200-300 a month for it. But anyway, so it says they had this subprime market where it says these loans to borrowers who did not meet the underwriting standards set forth by the GSEs or prime loans. And they found them in the Black community. And so you had these subprime lenders. Well, if you go back in the book and you go to page 110, she talked to us about contract sellers. So these subprime lenders were synonymous with contract sellers. And remember back in the day, the contract sellers were the people who would come to the Black community and say, well, I know the mortgage company isn't going to give you a mortgage, but if you want this house, what I can do is, set up a contract where you pay me X amount of dollars, for the next, 20 years. And when you finish paying, I'll give you the house. I'll give you the deed to the house. Right. And that rarely happened. Right. Typically, Black folks might mess up on a payment or two, or it's late. And then the white person say, you violated our contract, and they would take your money. OK. And so subprime lenders, it says, as contract sellers had exploited the credit-starved and redline ghettos, once again, high-priced lenders filled the void. High-interest mortgages were made legal by Congress and the courts, who guided by the ethos that fewer government regulations. Remember, this is a free market.
Right.
So we set the price, right? It's a free market. So it says that fewer government regulations would produce a healthier banking industry, lifted caps on interest rates. Brother T, that you want to get in there?
No, keep on rocking, sis. Keep on rocking.
All right. And so it says, as early as the 1980s, studies confirmed that another Jim Crow credit market had formed. So once the housing market went in and exploited the Black community, Brother T, the credit folks said, oh, it's our turn. Let's go to the Black folks. And I remember being at Morgan State University and Discover card walking up to me saying, hey, this is $1,500 on this Discover card. All you got to do is fill out the application. I'm like, $1,500. All right, cool. Right. I can need that. Well, we guarantee you that you'll get it. You just have to fill. We have a college program. And if you fill out the program, you fill out the application, guaranteed, you can walk away with a $1,500 credit card today. Brother T.
Right.
Look, Brother T. Hey, look, Brother T. So I said, hold up. Okay. All right. T, I burnt that $1,500 credit card up. I was charging books. I was going downtown with my cousin. We sitting there at Legal Seafood, T, eating lobster.
Right.
T, I'm being so truthful right now.
It's honest.
Look, I'm being honest. There was a Legal Seafood right across from the harbor. And my cousin, I said, come on, Ree, I got a $1,500 credit card. No one talked to me about credit. I didn't know, So I'm down at Legal Seafood like this, T. with lobster and potatoes, charging stuff.
This is the best decision I ever made.
And then look, T, couldn't pay the daggone bill. Couldn't pay off my credit card. And see, that's what the credit market knew about the Black community. See, the credit market said, look, we know we give out this card to these white folks. They're going to pay everything off in one payment at the end of the month, so I won't be able to collect on the interest. But we know in the Black community, they don't really have it like that.
That's right.
And so I know that there's going to be a balance that's going to roll over to the next month. And so I can collect interest on that.
That's right.
And they begin to come into the hood and give people credit cards. All right. And so look at this. It said consumer loans came flooding into the ghetto, where credit card issuers had been avoiding the zip codes where Blacks live. By the 1980s, they joined the mortgage lenders and began looking for them. So they were in the hood, brother T. They in the hood, brother T.
There you go.
They in the hood, brother T, looking for us. Right. And they found one. They found me because I was right there walking the Morgan with my little backpack on. They said got one.
And they got me a carbon too, so I know.
They said got one. And it says right here, yes, I already explained that. So moving on to page 239, it said consumer debt exploded in the 1970s and kept expanding. And what was even more alarming was that the gap between what was being borrowed and what was being repaid was also growing exponentially larger. The economy was running on fumes. Wages were stagnant, prices were increasing, and debt was being used to bridge the gap. Americans borrowed because they had to, and credit card issuers lent because the profits were being made. All right. And so then they talk about this whole concept, brother T, reverse redlining. And so could you get into that?
What page are you on that?
The middle of 239.
Okay, cool. All right. So the problem of Black borrowers was no longer an adequate quantity of mortgage credit, but an inferior quality of the credit. In other words, instead of refusing to lend in Black neighborhoods, subprime lenders were focusing their efforts there. So now you had senators and everyone creating this system of segregation. So basically it says, one attorney claimed, this is a system of segregation, really. We don't have separate water fountains, but we have separate lending institutions. The market scouts or entrepreneurs became insensitized to make profits in the ghetto in the enterprise zones. So after years of being left out of the mortgage market, Black subprime borrowers were exactly what Wall Street hungry mortgage beasts were looking for. The ultimate effect was a disproportionate wiping out of Black wealth when these subprime loans blew up decades later. So it's just to the point that they knew another way to keep us broke was to give us these loans because they were high interest, they were predatory, they gave us an opportunity to buy those things to get into a home, but it was a way to wipe us right out once again, and then take the property back so they can resell and get another victim. So the top of 240 says, what is not debated is the effect of the era of deregulation on the character of the banking sector. I think this is the part that they talked about how the American banking went from an industry consisting of small community banks to the one dominated by few large banking holding companies operating extensive branch networks. This is how small Black banks were knocked out of the system as well, because they started off small, but they didn't get invited into the big central banking systems, and also the Good Boy Club.
Right. And brother T, wasn't this, and I know they talking about deregulation. Remember, it was Hamilton, and wasn't it Jefferson's vision?
Right.
It was Hamilton and President Jefferson, and then
small
Hamilton.
Bank, big banking. So you had Jefferson with the small banking. If we keep it in state, we'll grow. And Hamilton was like, no, we need to be centralized and connect the banks so we can do international trade and banking, which we see today. So that's what we see today, basically.
Absolutely. And it says right here that, this was kind of like a get down or lay down type of thing, right? Mm-hmm. It was saying that, look, to be profitable back then, you had to have your hands, as they deregulated banks, banks started saying, okay, look, I want you to deregulate us and I want a piece of the pie. So they see the mortgage market exploiting folks, they making money. The credit markets are making money. They exploiting black folks, they exploiting. So everybody's making this money. The banks was like, hold up, I need you all to tighten the leash, from around me. I'm trying to get in here too. So before you know it, banks started depositing. It says today a profitable bank holding company engages in deposit taking and lending, but also trading and derivatives, stock market speculation, broker dealer operations, insurance, and merchant banking. This increased size and complexity has led to a finance dominated economy and unprecedented profits, right? And risk. It has also led to cannibalization of weak banks by the strong. So then, if you weren't a Wells Fargo or a Bank of America or JP Chase, JP Morgan and Chase, if you weren't one of them, if you didn't merge, then you had to close down. It says more banks merged in 1980 and 1990 than in any preceding decade in U.S. history. In just 10 years, from 1982 to 1992, 1,500 banks failed. It says 3/4 of all U.S. banks failures since the Great Depression. The least able to compete were banks in rural areas and where? In the ghetto. So that's when she talked about what happened with Jackie Robinson and his Freedom's National Bank of Harlem. It failed in 1990, but again, she talked about how the FDIC could have saved it, but it chose not to, and they were criticized by that. They were criticized for not doing that. In the middle of page, I want to go to 243. T, did you have something you wanted to add before I go? Or
before you go any further, when the chat, Ecabella on Mind and Body, she made a good point. Will financial literacy prevent exploitation?
Facts.
And the thing about it, financial literacy, will that prevent exploitation? No, I don't think 100%. And the reason why I say is that we can learn how to understand finances, the lingo, but as we see here, there were vehicles put into place that still prohibited. So it'll make you aware of what's going on, but policy with financial education, also with international education, with the other banking system and other trades will help you better than just financial literacy alone. Because then you understand how the world works, macroeconomics, and not just personal finance. Because when we think about financial literacy, we kind of keep it only on personal finance. And as we see, we worry about what's in our piggy bank. There's someone else ready to crush our piggy bank, take our money, because we don't understand how that system of financial movement works. So we need more than just financial literacy. And this is what Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell speaks about. It's more than just knowing what money to put our stock, what money to buy stocks with. It's understanding that business and how that business destroys our community and our banking system by merging. So we have to understand how the system works and see how we can get into that to bring that down to benefit us.
Absolutely.
So
hold up.
You're so funny.
Oh my goodness. All right. So Brother T, I'm in the middle of page 243, but more so towards the bottom. So when you talk about why black banks fail, black banks would work, family, if we had, as I always say, a closed loop system where every dollar that was put in there and it made its way. Hold up. First of all, not even just a closed loop system and the ability to multiply the dollars within the closed loop system. So you have to have a closed loop system where the money is circulating amongst us, but that money is also being multiplied, right? Like that's important. But let me tell you why black banks can't do it. So let's go to the middle of page 243. And this is a dagger, a shout out, a dagger to, not even a shout out, but a dagger to people like Killer Mike. And I don't care if y'all take this clip, because you know how sometimes they take the clip T and they chop it up and they send it, because on YouTube now you have the clip, you know, there's a clip symbol, so you can actually watch the video. Yeah, you can clip it, and it's like 15 seconds. I think I know when I did it was like 15 seconds.
You ready?
I'm not sure if you can adjust it or what, but you know, people could take a clip of what you say. I'm going to send this to Killer Mike and T.I. Please do, because they were huge advocates of, you know, banking black, and this is what we need to do. We need to be putting our monies in black banks and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. Okay. It says black banks, because of, you know, because of the lack of support that black banks have. Okay. It says black banks made fewer loans. It says they were undercapitalized and had lower profits than any other banks. So when they started doing the deregulations, it says after the deregulatory wave, all small banks struggled to remain competitive against the large bank conglomerates. But black banks also had to contend with the particular circumstances that had always been a particular challenge for them, with a few modern updates. Black banks were still overinvested in less profitable government securities and were making too few loans. They held 46.5% of their total assets in highly liquid securities, as opposed to white banks, which only held 29.5% on average. They overinvested in government securities because they had high loan losses and too much deposit volatility. Black banks also had a new capital problem. Capital is the amount of the bank that is owned by investors. Capital is therefore linked to bank profitability in a circular fashion. The more profitable a bank, the more investors it can attract. Black banks had higher costs and higher risk, and therefore lower profits. This meant that they could not attract enough capital investment. Okay, so just to summarize this, all right, you have so you're dealing with that. And then you have this right here. I'm in the middle of page 45. She said, to paint a complete picture, deposits from urban ghettos. So this, remember, black banks had to put 46% in government securities. Okay. Right. All right. So to paint a complete picture, deposits from the urban ghetto were prime mortgages were dispersed, right? Were sparse, were being used to lend on mortgages in new housing communities across the country. Meanwhile, subprime lenders were sucking away wealth by lending into the black community and exporting the profits to financial conglomerates on Wall Street. Black banks could not control or multiply the money in the ghetto. So you have black banks who are investing 46.5% of their money in government securities. Well, what does it say right here? It says their over investment in government securities meant that they were using their customer deposits to finance mortgages outside of their community, right? Mm-hmm. So it says they were doing that. So then on top of that, remember we talked about subprime mortgages earlier and prime mortgages. On top of that, the black community we had subprime mortgages, right? And these mortgages were mortgages with high interest. And so what were those subprime lenders doing? Well, they're taking the money and they're putting it in their financial institutions because we were paying our mortgages to them. So black banks didn't get a piece of the pie. So black banks could not control and multiply the money in the ghetto. And so my question to a T.I. or to a Killer Mike would be, okay, let's say that 48 million of us, we put all of our money in a black bank. What is the plan to control and multiply the black dollar? Because we've done that, right? We did that with the Freedmen's Bank, Brother T, and we lost millions, right? We did that. We put all our money in there, and it was supposed to be for housing. Oh, we're going to help you buy, not housing, land. We're going to help you get land, and you're going to be your own master and all of this other stuff. So if we all took our money, T, and we put it in a black bank, what is the plan to control right? To control the money in the black bank and to multiply it, right? And by control, I mean, family, without the money getting into white hands. Because we see right now, Brother T, it's going all the way back to the 1800s. We were putting our money in black banks, Brother T. And somehow, some way, our money was utilized to fund other banks, to fund mortgages outside of the community, tied up in government securities. What is the plan to control, i.e., maintain the black dollar within the black banking institution or the black community so that it doesn't seep into other communities, and to multiply it? That would be my question.
Where?
Go ahead, Brother T.
How's it going to happen? We see right here that money was created, high interest was created, taken out of our communities, put into other banks. How can we ensure that money is going to stay in our communities and build our homes? And we just found out, we just read in this part that our loans were not keeping up the black banks afloat. And the way that money circulated, it was always removed from our communities and put into other institutions. So how can someone say it's going to just benefit us? It's not made to benefit, even in the banking system.
Facts.
To be circular and to come right back to us, and also to multiply, because it's only multiplied by interest. So it seems to me that they were fattening the pig to slaughter. How else is it going to happen? How else? It's not going to happen no other way. Who was going to be slaughtered? Who was going to be given bad loans? Who was going to give bad mortgages, high interest? Was this bank going to be created so we can be now the prey and they can be the predators? This is how the banking system is. It's never there to build the community up. It's only there to take and to create finance fees, which most of our black banks were created for. They knew, hey, if it's not going to be profitable because of the loans of paying off things, we'll be profitable because we can definitely get some NFT fees, non-sufficient fund fees from them to keep us afloat.
Al-Qibla in mind, that's what I say. She said, with all due respect, right? Is it even possible? If so, how? That's what we're asking, Queen. That's what we're asking, Queen. All right. And so I just want to read the last paragraph on for the chapter, and then and we'll cut out of here. She says, even as Jim Crow credit market and the ghetto economic trap continued, policymakers insisted that race was no longer an issue, that Martin Luther King's dream had been realized and an equal playing field had been established. They used Barack Obama to support that rhetoric. Look at the conversation that I just had. Family, please, 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 when you get an opportunity, and I'm going to drop the link in the chat, please go here. Let me share my screen with you. Please go here, family. Where's the business of being black? So shows the business of being black.
I wish you could play just that end clip and to end the show off with.
I just want the family to go there. So we had a conversation called The Business. I'm sorry. This is a show called The Business of Being Black with Tammy Mack on Fox Soul. And so you see your sister, Dr. Ma'at, was in the building. Let me go here. And you see the title of it. It says, "Is America a Racist Country?" Do you know one of the panelists said, "How's America a racist country? I mean, we just had the first black president." He did. Barack Obama. How can you say that America is racist? They use that to say, and I was getting ready to go into and say, first of all, Barack Obama he's not black. He's not, he's not black. He's not what we would consider, FBA or ADOS. He's not that, right? He's, he's a mulatto. He's biracial. So I know a lot of y'all ran around and you stood in line. I know they got me, T. They got me. with the propaganda machine. And I was right in line. The lines were wrapped around the corner, Brother T. And I thought I was making a difference. He's the black president. I saw Michelle Obama and I was sold. I saw his wife and I saw the children. And I said, oh, it was, and he did nothing for black people. You know what I mean?
Not a thing.
Did nothing. He, but on this show, family, and I want you to watch it when you get a chance. Okay, and I'm gonna show you the guy that said it. Hold on, hold on. I was mad, family. I started squinching my face up, and I was talking, and so I was passionate about what I was saying. So anyway, I just was upset that these people were trying to even argue. Oh, here we go. Let's go back. Let's go back to the panel. Oh, oops. Okay, there we go. So it was this brother, right? I don't even want to say brother. This dude right here, Derek.
Tom.
Yeah, he this one. We had Barack Obama. I just wish I had the timestamp for this, Brother T. We had Barack Obama, and so they believe this stuff. I may be able to find it like I did with Clinton. Here, hold up, T.
I'm kind of tired of that example to be.
Yes.
Adopting black children. You don't see black families adopting. Everybody can see the progress. This would be a racist conversation if white felons could vote, but blacks couldn't. Now, if we want to talk about why there are more black felons incarcerated than
looking at when we
to do, there's one thing that people like Dr. Mayat do not do. American United.
Derek.
That is not what he said.
One from the bench.
Now, how does racism possibly exist? Dr. Mays, how so?
But because it was.
I'm looking for
even Harriet Tubman is as far as
the KKK. Right now, I mean, you know how many brothers were shot in Chicago this weekend?
They were. Oh, I'm a roast them, Brother T, because I'm gonna do a replay on this on my channel this week.
Okay.
And I'm roasting them. They were blaming mass incarceration on black people and telling us that we need to be afraid of black men more than white men. And these are two. That's why they say all skin folk ain't kinfolk. But they were saying stuff like that, like you need to be afraid of black men more than black, than white people, than white men. They were saying Barack Obama is a testament that America isn't racist. So I'm telling you, family, let me put the link in the chat. Let me just drop the link in the chat for you. Please check this out when you get a chance. All right, please check this out, family, when you get a chance. But anyway, she says that, they're saying Martin Luther King's dream has been realized and equal playing field has been established. Yet, despite the rise of black stars in entertainment, sports, business, and the arts, multitudes of black men and women were born without a chance of even prying themselves loose from crime, prison, and the poverty trap of the ghetto. With the firmly established myth, because it is a myth, that equality had finally been achieved, black poverty and crime could only be explained as a sign of moral failure. And the only acceptable response to the failure to rise out of the ghetto was tough love and forceful containment. I tell people all the time, the police just contains the crime. They contain everything. They're not really there to help solve. Look at Baltimore, how many unsolved murders we had. They just want to contain it. They want to keep it away from white folks. So they come in, they give a report. Sometimes they lock somebody up. Sometimes they find somebody. I think the case, what's the rate for solving cases in Baltimore? The murder rate, I think it's like 30% or something like that. It's low. All right, so they're not really trying to solve any cases. And it says right here, while policymakers were celebrating the triumph of equality and capitalism, the invisible hand of the free market was actually pulling apart and increasing the opportunity and wealth gap between black and white. So, family, that is chapter 7. Next Sunday, we're going to be discussing the last chapter of the book. So there were some folks saying, "What book are you all reading out in the chat?" In the chat, I saw you. So we were discussing The Color of Money: Black Banks and the Racial Wealth Gap by Mehrsa Baradaran. Next week, we are discussing the last chapter of the book entitled The Color of Money Matters. The Color of Money Matters. And so, family, if you don't have the book, if you don't have the book, and even if you know you haven't read the chapter, please still join us. And T, I can't, I'm petty. T, I'm petty. So I couldn't T let it go. Remember, I roast her every chance I get. I gotta pull up that clip of her saying, "I'm not gonna do anything for Black people." I had to go back to that.
Do you support reparations for Black people?
Had to go back to that, T.
Oh, wow.
Had to go back because you mentioned Kamala, and Kamala gets under my skin.
Right.
She's running around. She gets under my skin. And so you mentioned earlier that she didn't support racism. So I want to close with Kamala.
Do you support reparations for Black people?
Well, listen, again, we had over 200 years of slavery. We had Jim Crow for almost a century. We had legalized discrimination and segregation, and now we have segregation and discrimination that is not legal but still exists and is a barrier to progress. We have disparities around housing. We have disparities around education. We have disparities around income. And we have to recognize that everybody did not start out on an equal footing in this country. And in particular, Black people have not. And so we have got to recognize that and do something about that and give folks a lift up. That's why, for example, I'm proposing the LIFT Act. Give people who are making $100,000 or less as a family a tax credit, which will benefit and uplift 60% of Black families who are in poverty.
So by default, it affects Black families, but there's not a particular policy for African Americans that you would support.
But no, if you look at the reality of who will benefit from certain policies, when you take into account that they're not starting at the same place and they're not starting on equal footing, it will directly benefit Black children, Black families, Black homeowners, because the disparities are so significant. So if we focus on the specific issues that have resulted in the greatest disparities, and we understand that that's part of why we're doing it. Listen, the reality also is this: any policy that will benefit Black people will benefit all of society. Let's be clear about that. Let's really be clear about that. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit Black people. No.
Oh, T, let me take it back. Hold on. Hold on. What she say? Hold on. So she didn't just laid out the case for reparations, right? And then said, well, I'm not going to do anything that's going to be directly. Hold on.
So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit Black people. No.
Hold on. I got to play that one more time. Hold on.
Really be clear about that. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit Black people. No, because whatever benefits that Black family will benefit that community and society as a whole and the country, right?
And Black folks should be ashamed. Whoever went out there, and yep, I'm politically shaming right now. Whoever went out there, Brother T, and voted for Kamala and Jim Crow Joe, you should be ashamed of yourself. Right. You should be ashamed of yourself. I just wanted to close out with that. Brother T, did you have any closing words, King?
Just her simply saying, whatever helps Black people helps society and base. She definitely subliminally stated we're the lowest on the hierarchy based off economics, right? So if it helps the poorest, it's going to help everybody. That's basically what she said without saying it. She caught herself up. It's just to the point that, family, we got to stay engaged in all of the policy, everything in front of us. The only way we're going to make this thing right for us is being engaged in the process, understanding the process, breaking down the process in settings like this so we can effectively go out there and do what we need to do. Dr. Ahmad.
No, I mean, I couldn't say it better. As soon as I say you should be ashamed of yourself, we lost some people.
Like,
oh, you mad at me because I voted for Biden and Kamala. Look, we lost a couple of people. Since I said you should be ashamed of yourself, he said,
"Gotta go." I was up to you. Now I gotta go.
They hit the X button on me, brother T. But it's all good, family. I love all of y'all. I love all of y'all. But I did have to spank you a little bit if you made that move. But anyway, family, join us back here next Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the R.E.A.D Book Club. Also, family, to discuss the last chapter, of The Color of Money, Black Banks, and the Racial Wealth Gap. Our next book, family, is The Color of Law. Our next book is The Color of Law. So if you are interested in reading that book with us, please grab the book. Again, next week, we're going to be discussing the last chapter of The Color of Money. And we may discuss the epilogue or whatever. We may or may not discuss that. But we are reading the last chapter. And then we're going to take like a break for a couple of weeks. Because Brother T and I, we've been going back to back. And it's just reading and doing this. And so we're going to take a couple of Sundays off. And then we'll start, The Color of Money 2 weeks after we finish discussing this. So please grab the book, The Color of Law, if you're interested in. As a matter of fact, let me stop my camera and get the cover for y'all. Hold on, T. I got it right here. All right, so this is the book. I already have it. This is the next book, The Color of Law, by Richard Rothstein. It says A Forgotten History of How Our Government Segregated America. So I know he's going to get into redlining and all that stuff. So family, please grab this book. And if you grab the book, I would prefer you grab it from an independent Black store. I know it's easier. It's more convenient to just go on Amazon and we get the book. It shows up at our door 2 hours later. But everyone's place, they ship locally, they ship nationally, they ship internationally, and they usually carry every book that we have. So Google Everyone's Place in Baltimore, see if they have it. I know there's a Black and Nobel is in Philadelphia. See if they have it. So there's a few, Black owned, Black independent bookstores. See if they have this book first, and then grab this book as soon as you can. All right, and so you can read along with us. All right, look, family, have a black-tastic week. I'll be back live on Tuesday at 7 p.m. to talk about reparations. I was on the panel for reparations on the Fox Soul episode of being in the business of being Black. And so one of the guests, Brother T, her name is Zykia. She's going to come on with me, and Zykia is a bad sister. She's going to come on with me, and we're going to review the discussion together. And so, family, I will be back live this Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then I'll be back live again on Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then I'll be back live on Saturday. I have Dr. Tyreen Wright, the sister who wrote the book about Booker T. Washington, The Making of a Pan-Africanist. She's coming on the platform this Saturday. So family, make sure you subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell so that whenever I'm live, you will be notified. And El Kibulan also said, S1 bookstores in LA, California. Thank you so much for that, Queen. So I'll see you all next time. All right. Have a black-tastic week. Peace and Black power.